This is the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and on each episode, I'm going to help you get savvy to allow you and your business to grow. We'll be focusing on the 3 elements that lead to business success: your mindset, your processes, and your skills. Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy, and I'm your host today, Mark Terrell, where we talk about things that will hopefully help you get more savvy about lots of different things around your leadership and in your business. Today we are talking about communication from a good friend of mine who we have known each other for a long time. He's helped me in my businesses, and I'm now one of his licensees for the motivational maps motivational maps product that he created. So I am delighted today that we have James Sale joining us to talk about communication in probably a little bit different way than we're probably used to. He's created a new diagnostic around it, and so we'll dive into that, and I've got my own results to share with you, so hopefully you'll find that interesting. At any point during the show, please leave your comments. I will get back to you if we can't comment straight away. We'd like to get your input, and please feel free to interact. So without further ado, let's bring James on to join us. Hello, James.
Hello, Mark. Lovely to be here.
Really looking forward to this. Before we get stuck into the topic and also look into the things that motivate you, tell us a bit about yourself.
A bit about myself, really, that would take far too long. I think all I can talk about is what's been happening this year. And it's been a really, really incredibly busy year and a very productive year. So 3 things that I've been working on regarding this specific business that will be of interest is, firstly, in January, we had the final installment of our Routledge sequence of books, Mapping Motivations for Top Performing Teams, came out. That's the 5th book in the series and the last book in the series, and that's obviously generated a lot of interest and comment. So that was exciting. The second thing, of course, has been the new product that you mentioned, the 5 elements Communication Skills Diagnostic. So that's good. And the third thing is supporting, of course, the licensees who use motivational maps worldwide. I mean, this week alone, I have 3 Zoom calls. So where I'm actually talking to groups of licensees who love the product and want to know more. So I'd like to think that's kind of like supporting the whole structure of what we're doing, creating materials, creating ideas, and directly inputting them. And so that has been very, very exciting for me.
Sounds fabulous. In that you certainly haven't been sitting down watching Netflix, obviously.
No, although I am doing a rewatch of Lewis, which is one of my all-time favourite, the Morse sidekick that Waitley did. So I just love that series. It's just so classy. Yeah,
brilliant. And we can watch it whenever we fancy now. So we haven't got to wait for it to come back on telly. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Right. Well, we'll get back to more about what you do with motivational maps. But first of all, let's dive into what motivates you, James. And this is what you shared with me. These are your recently completed in the last few weeks, apparently. Your top motivator.
2 weeks ago. Yeah.
This is what I normally do. Just explain what the 3 are. The top motivator there, James, is the creator. So innovation, new ideas, bringing new ideas to into the world is something that motivates James. High expert. He is an expert and wants to be an expert and seeks knowledge in what he does and specialise in what he does.
Yeah.
And lastly, he wants to make a difference. So those are the 3 things that motivate you, James. So how do they show up in what you do and the way you run your business?
Well, really, if you take the top one, for a long while now, my wife came up, I think, with the title for me. But, I'm a director of Motivational Maps Limited. She's the managing director. So she's actually in charge. But I'm called the creative director. And so really, I mean, all the ideas and the blogging, the articles, the books, and the development of stuff really comes down to what I do. And that is what I love doing. I mean, I love pushing it a bit further. And I think one of the things about this as well is it's, on the one hand, one does research, and on the other, one synthesizes ideas. And I'd like to think that some of what most of what I'm doing really is some sort of synthesis. The maps themselves were, as you know, from Maslow, from Edgar Schein, and also from the Enneagram. And one realized in looking at these things, one could synthesize something new from what was already there. So it's all about really sort of seeing the opportunities and potentials and things that maybe other people haven't seen or have overlooked or not thought important, and from that creating something. I mean, part of my background many years ago, over 25 years now, but I was a teacher at one point, and I think one of the things being a teacher taught me was to try to make things not theoretical but practical. And I spent a lot of my time working on things which, is this practically useful? I mean, what clients want from you, if you're a coach or you're a consultant, you're a trainer, what they want is they want two things. Firstly, they want a solution, fine, but they also love to have insight, creating insight into understanding their problem at a deeper level. So a lot of what the tools are about are trying to create, a kind of understanding for you, the coach, so that when you see your client, you can give them a deeper knowledge, a deeper understanding of what it is their real problem is, as opposed to what might be the manifest problem or the apparent problem. What seems to be the problem seems to be this, but when you actually dig down using some of these tools and ideas, you find it might be something else. And that is what I love, uncovering the invisible and making it visible.
Fabulous. And I was going to say that, if you weren't going to say it yourself, about making the invisible visible, is the thing that these tools, your tools and many other tools, they give us such valuable feedback and understanding how we see the world. And as my other half, we accept that we see certain things in a different way. And that's the thing. You just accept that that's the case, understanding that that's the case. And whenever, we can only judge things on the things that we've experienced. And
yes.
on what we want in the future as well. So that obviously has no factor.
Yes.
So that's really, really great insight. Obviously, James, this is the tool that you created. And interesting to talk about your lowest motivator. You don't normally do that, actually. And you used to be, I know, the director motivator, which is the same as my lowest motivator. But actually, that's recently changed.
Yes, I was surprised to find that I had an inverse, but the actual director motivator was the second lowest with 12 out of 40. But my defender motivator come in at 8, which of course is a polarity reinforcement with my number one motivator. In other words, the creator is highly, well, actually it was 38 out of 40, so that's a spike, but it's clearly a risk-friendly kind of motivator. And having my defender so low, being risk averse, it kind of doubles up on my risk, which is surprising when you think about the context we're in. It seems we've been in a COVID situation. For many people, what they want more security, and it's been very important for them to, double down, make sure they're this, make sure that they've got their income, make sure their business is secure, make sure. But it would appear for me, bizarrely, that this kind of approach has really made me like more reckless. I'm less concerned about security and more concerned about getting out there and getting stuff going and not hiding my bushel or my fire, the light of my bushel under fire. So yes, it's definitely a surprise to me, and I'm not complacent about it, because clearly we need to take due measures to ensure we mitigate risk. I'm not recommending recklessness, but I can see in myself a certain tendency to perhaps not pay enough attention to that potential Achilles heel.
That's really interesting. I think also, with going back to what you said there, is a lot of people have seen this as an opportunity as opposed to something that's, has been a catastrophe, which it has in many, many ways. We certainly would hope that it doesn't happen again in soon. But actually, the opportunities that come out of it, that's the thing, isn't it? Understanding, the world's changed, but what is now the reality? What is the new opportunities that come from it? And I suppose that's the way to look at the situation that we've been through.
Well, it is. And I think I was saying this only the other day to a friend of mine in Florida. I was doing a Zoom call with Hugh Liddle, who's a great guy. And I said to him, the strange experience of going through the lockdown for me, it really has polarized companies and organizations. And when I say organizations, I'm talking about sole traders as well. I'm talking about individuals into two camps. And the two camps are quite clearly people who want to use COVID as an excuse for all the inadequacies of their business, and people who see it as an opportunity to do new and exciting things. And one thing I did have was, I didn't mention to Hugh, but a few months back, I went for had a weekend away in Winchester to visit my son, who lives in Winchester. And we went down at Jury Road, in fact, and we went actually over 2 days to two restaurants that were diametrically opposite each other. One was on one side of the road and one was on the other. One was a brand and one was privately owned. The privately owned one was a Thai restaurant, in fact. The Thai restaurant was awesome. Yes, we wore masks. Yes, we went through some stuff. But actually, the whole thing was about the experience of being in the restaurant and the quality of the food and what they did for you. We went into the brand. I won't mention the name of it because it's not fair to them. But basically, they seemed to think that making me wash my hands, wearing a mask, giving me this dreadful service because they were protecting me was actually what I went to the restaurant for. It was quite astonishing how two different restaurants, in direct competition with each other, could give you such a different level of service. One blaming COVID for everything, and the other not even mentioning it, or just getting on and giving you some great stuff.
So always remembering the problem we solved, and restaurants is not just about the food; it's about the experience, isn't it?
It's about the whole experience.
Yeah, absolutely,
exactly.
Good stuff. Thank you for sharing those motivators. So now that we know what motivates you, James, tell us about what motivated you to get into creating a diagnostic about communication.
Well, I remember over 20 years ago, I came across an article by the great American guru, Brian Tracy, who said, I think, and I think I'm quoting him more or less correctly, but it's something to the effect that 85% of all organizational problems were down to communication. Now, 85% is an astonishing number. And I at first regarded that with huge suspicion. But if we were to include the word communication in its broadest sense, so for example, the broadest sense would include motivation, I would totally agree with that. And so this new diagnostic, in fact, one of the things I actually say in the diagnostic as part of the blurb at some point in it is that, basically the two single most important things for a business to thrive in the long term are one, motivation of yourself, motivation of your teams, motivation of your staff, but two, effective communication. And I realized I didn't have a full-on communications skills type diagnostic that I could use. So the motivation was really the same sort of motivation that led me to the motivational tool. Here was something missing in the armory, something different that some people would find really exciting and new that I could add to motivational maps. And also too, and I'll make this point clear as well, I wanted to launch it into the world in a very different way to the maps. So the maps is very much based on a licensing model, whereas the communication styles diagnostic is not. It's simply there in a kind of retail version. That's not to say licensees can't access it with special deals and etc. What I wanted was something which you didn't have to come to an intermediary to get to it. And there's an interesting sidebar to that, and it's obviously very early days, things have only just been launched, but we've already been contacted by a major household Japanese corporate to use the diagnostic with one of their teams, and we've had the result of that. So it's quite fascinating that you can get this kind of traction so quickly with something that's just out there and it's not going through. So we want to experiment with this just to see how this model works vis-a-vis the other model we've got. So in a way, we're doing a kind of business experiment to see, is this as good as, is it not as good as? We can change because we're a small business. We have no problem. If we don't think it's working, we'll change. Mm-hmm. So we're now waiting to see what happens.
So the first time I came across the model was in one of your books, which is Mapping Motivation for Leadership. Is that right?
Yes. Oh, that's the one. I love it. Yes.
So explain why it's in the leadership book as opposed to any of the other books.
I think the true reason is incompetence. I'm actually not a systematic. You see, I notice you've got processes as one of the key things for your thing. That is probably the thing I am the weakest at. In fact, in this book, it actually says in one of the footnotes, the end notes to the book, in one of the chapters, it says, expect more about the 5 elements model in the next book, Mapping Motivation for Top Performing Teams, and in the book after that. Well, the book after this isn't coming, and it's only mentioned twice in a footnote in this book. So in fact, when I wrote that book, I didn't quite realize I got carried away with new stuff in that book, which meant I could have said more about the 5 elements model, but I made a decision not to. So as you can see with me, Mark, I kind of make things up as I go along, and then I correct myself as I do it. Nobody's spotted that yet, including the editor, and I'm not going to tell them. But so basically, that's the facetious reason, the frivolous reason. A much more serious reason is that this model is a particularly brilliant tool for leadership. It does actually fit in this particular slot. It might have fitted in the top performing teams, but there it is. It does a number of things. It helps the leader communicate with the team. It also helps the leader plan what they're going to do. There are these two major applications of this tool. One is the self-awareness of yourself and of the team. And secondly, there's this ability, because it's a holistic system, of using it as a planning tool. And there's plenty of information on both those applications in that book. There's 3 chapters, in fact, 3 whole chapters, which is nearly a half of the book is devoted to this topic.
And it's a great read, and there's so much value in there. I mean, I've been delving into it recently because I'm writing my own book. I don't know if I've mentioned that, but I'm in the process of writing a book. So obviously, any valuable resources I'm delving into at the moment to see what insights I can use in my own book. So,
well, if I can help you in any way, Mark, let me know.
I will be in touch. Right, let's share with the audience what we're talking about here is these 5 elements. So do you want to talk us through what the 5 elements are? Yes, I
do. What I like to do when I talk about this, Mark, is I need to challenge the audience, challenge you, in fact, and it's this, and this is particularly relevant now because we're coming out of lockdown and everybody wants a holiday. So the question is, what is the first question that pops into your mind when you think about your next holiday? What is that question? Make a note of it now, because it might be a clue as to what your communication style is. Because usually there are 5 types of question that people ask themselves. Now, they won't be exactly like this, and they'll say an answer which will fit into one of the 5. But they're this: you either think to yourself, where do I want to go? Now, if you look at that model that Mark has flagged up there, that's a visioning question. It's the same as when in personal development, we say, where do I want to be? Where do I want to be in 5 years' time? Where do I want to go? The second question we ask ourselves is, how am I going to get there? Now, that's not a visioning question. That actually is a planning question. That's about plans. So, for example, if you were terrified of flying, which you might be, you hate going up, and I actually don't. I'm not terrified, but I don't like planes much. I much prefer trains. So going to Australia perhaps is not an ideal thing for you because you've got to spend a long time in a plane. The third question is, you might have said to you, how much is it going to cost me? How much can I afford? And that is a resourcing question. We call this a facilitating question. It's not just about money. It's about time. It's about information. It's about a whole range of things. In fact, 9 things, which you can find in the book, all 9 of the aspects. But it's about facilitating, resourcing. And then fourthly, we might ask ourselves, what do I like doing when I get there? So, for example, if you like visiting old cathedrals, going to Australia is going to be a bit of a waste of time, isn't it? If you like being on a sun and sandy beach and having plenty of ultraviolet hitting your eyes, going to Australia could be a great idea. So what do I like to do? That's the key thing that will decide where I'm going to go on my holiday. And the final question is, what did I do last year? And was that any good? I went to Bognor Regis. It rained all the time. I'll go again. I like it. But so we have 5 questions, and each one of them reveals a style. Each one of them has certain qualities. Now, I won't go through them all now, but just to put this in brief, for example, they've all got a kind of tense in which they operate. So visioning and planning, by their very nature, are future orientated. They're also very cerebral. They're up there in our head. We're thinking ahead to what we want. Facilitating and doing are very present tense. And by the way, as an extra bonus for you, facilitating and doing are different from the other 3 in another way as well. They are both, of course, very people orientated. You can do visioning and planning in your head, but you can't do facilitating and doing in your head. You have to cut it. You have to be there with the people. You have to make it happen with the people, with the team. And finally, the checking is past tense. It's what we sometimes call evaluation or monitoring what's going on. So this is being about analytic, about being accurate, about being reflective. The kind of people who've got a communication style that's checking, for example, one of their favorite, well, they have two favorite modes of communicating. One is in writing. Can you see that I'm talking about there? And the other is by asking questions. When you visit your accountant, of course, who one sees as an ultimate checker, they ask you questions about what you've done into the year. And is this receipt really a receipt for the business, or were you going on holiday for your family? So they ask questions. So each one of these is a different style. Now, here's the thing you've got to get. So you can actually have one of them in your profile, which we call single focus. But you can also have, as Mark has, two of them in their profile, which we call double focus. Or, wait for it, you could even have three in your profile. And you can have four, and a very, very small number of people, very small indeed, have all five. And these people have what we call a kind of micro styles. They're highly flexible. In fact, we call it adaptable. So we have what we have in the maps. We can move from being very focused to being very balanced. It's not good or bad. It sometimes depends upon the context in which you're operating. So knowing what our profile is, one, helps us realize what's causing us problems with other people, and two, helps us adapt our style so that we can, in fact, really get on with somebody by talking their kind of language in the way that they like it.
That's really interesting. So what the question that comes to mind is that obviously these are steps that we all go through. But
Yes.
what you're saying here is where we go to first that's important to us. The key here, yeah?
Yes. So to put this in a bigger context, this 5-step model is really based on the Chinese 5 elements model. So those of you who've done acupuncture and Chinese medicine will know this 5 elements model. And it starts off in spring, which is green, which is the visioning, which is wood, the element of wood. Then we go to early summer, which is red, which is the fire element. And of course, wood, when it burns, for it to burn, fire needs wood. So wood leads to fire, which burns. The fire then creates ashes, which go into the earth, which is the third, the facilitating. The earth, Mother Earth, becomes the facilitator of everything. And the ash goes into the earth. And in the earth, when we dig into it, we find there are minerals and metals, which is the doing stage where the value comes out. The gold of the minerals come from digging in the earth when we do it. Then from that, when the metal's extracted, water condenses on it, which is when we can actually see what we've got, the kind of purification process. And then the water itself leads back to the spring and wood. So we go from spring to winter in a continuous cycle. So to do any project you want, you have to consider all 5 steps. And the trouble with a communication style is, we tend to do the step we like or likes, if we've got 2 or 3, and we tend to omit the steps we don't particularly respond to. And that's such an important thing.
Okay, I'm thinking that this is probably a good time to share my results, because I think that's what you're getting to here, James.
I can't wait to see them.
Give some insight into what my results are. Yeah. So here we are. This is my 5 elements results. Right. You'll see my yellow sized or facilitator.
Yeah, we can see clearly here with Mark Terrell. I'm going to ask him a question in a second, but we can see clearly that basically he has 2. He is double focused. So he's not adaptable. He's not flexible. He's double focused. Now, that's not to say he's not adaptable or flexible in an absolute sense, because being self-aware can help you overcome your own default position. But the default position for Mark is he wants to facilitate things, present tense, optimistic, upbeat, and critically, the style of the facilitator is dialogue. It's the only one of the 4 which really likes dialogue, conversation, in other words. So the others kind of like talk to themselves or write to themselves. But, the facilitator actually has dialogue. At the same time, and it's not too far, 5-point difference, he also likes visioning. So this has got massive implications for his business. So his business will have a vision, and also too, he will be very good at facilitating. What he's less good at, though, are the other 3 areas. Now, here's the question for Mark I want to ask Mark. Okay, Mark, now, how long have you known me, Mark?
It's at least 20 years now, I think.
It's over 20 years, probably 22, 23 years. We've been friends for 22, 23 years. Now, we say friends, Mark, because I think we are friends, but here's the question that's the follow-up. Do we or don't we get on well together when we're together?
I think we do. Yeah.
Have you ever noticed any difficulty in talking to me, particularly, in all the times we've worked together over that period of time?
I can't remember a time when I did. No.
No. Has it been easy for you?
Sometimes you challenge me, which is a good thing. You'll definitely see things differently to me, and that's the good thing I see in what you bring and what we talk about stuff. Yeah.
Okay, but by and large, because we've stuck together, it is the case that it's been a pretty smooth road between the two of us.
Yeah,
you'd say that. Okay, now here's the thing you don't know. You see, your communication styles profile is not quite, but is nearly identical to mine.
Ooh.
See, I've got visioning 1, and facilitating 2, and planning and doing and checking below the line. So we are both persuasive directors. Which is what the phrase that comes in your report, persuasive directors. We're both persuasive people. The fact that I've challenged you is probably because I'm a little bit more visioning than you are. So possibly, if we were just facilitators, we'd probably be just scratching each other's backs all the time. But actual fact, you've got a vision, but I've got a very strong vision as well. So when I tend to be kind of persuasive directing. Now, you think of me, perhaps I'd like to think, you think I'm a really nice guy. James is easy to talk to, he's got ideas, etc. But there are people out there who don't like me at all. They find me very, very difficult to deal with. And they see my persuasive directing as being a load of bullshit. And the kind of person who does that would be a doing kind of person, a checking kind of person, even a planning kind of person would possibly find me much more difficult to deal with than you do. So alongside the motivational profiles we've got, where we share motivations, this adds another level of like attracts like. When we find people with profiles like ourselves, we find it very easy to communicate with them. But when we find that person who is actually, say, checking, keeps asking us questions one after the other, wants it all in writing, wants it all in triplicate, wants this, that, and the other, we think, heck, please stop, go away. I don't like this. And they find my verbosity really kind of, oh dear, words, please, can we have some facts, please, rather than your opinions about things? So this is really, really powerful as a tool to know yourself and then to start. I automatically, when I'm with other people, start thinking, well, they haven't done the test, so I can't be 100% certain, but this person seems to me to be a planner. This person seems to me to be a doer. This person seems to me to have 2 or 3 styles, which they're moving in between. So to take your example, which is such a good one, this Japanese corporation, the team that have just done this, funnily enough, I'd fit in the team very well. They've got visioning number 1 as a team, not as an individual, but as a team. And they've got facilitating number 2, same as me, similar to you. And their planning, doing and checking is below the line. I could go in tomorrow and say to that team, now, let me ask you a couple of questions. Does this team full of great ideas? Yeah, we have great ideas. Does everyone like each other? We all get on so well together. Facilitating, I said. And do you find that not too much happens after you've done all this? Great ideas. Do you have a problem getting things done? And I'm certain, well, yeah, sometimes we have all these ideas and that's exactly it. Immediately, we're going to see. But of course, that's not to make doing the be all and end all, because I've come across individuals and teams where they're doing, and there's no vision. So what happens? You become like an ant in a bee, in a hive, it's an ant nest or something, where you're kind of like, you're busy, but there's no internal vision for what it is you're trying to do. So, each one of these is a strength, but each one on its own becomes a dreadful weakness. So this is why this is so important.
That's really interesting. And just going back to your top 3 motivators, I have the same top 3, but slightly different order, and obviously the values
Stop
will be.
copying me. Stop copying me.
But Yeah, I mean that's interesting, isn't it? It is interesting, but I suppose I suppose it shows that we see the world in a similar sort of way. I suppose, and
Well, it's not too surprising. I mean,
no,
here's the thing about this: if we look back to you, knowing as I do, I mean, I'm sure most of your listeners will know that you were a very successful retailer with a brand franchise for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, however long you did that job, right? And you were brilliant at it. I know that because I went into your business as a consultant several times, and we worked together on investors in people, all that stuff. So you were brilliant at it. But the thing about that retail job, working in a supermarket kind of environment, is the key essence of it is actually checking and doing.
yeah,
You cannot run a shop like that with all those products, hundreds, if not thousands of products that you've got to price at micro levels to make sure you go to your shop, not Tesco's or the Co-op or whatever. You cannot do that without actually being a natural doing and checker. After 15 or however many years, were absolutely burnt out with that because there was something in you that had a vision of yourself being a coach. Actually, most coaches have growth motivators. It's not a surprise. And if they didn't have it, they wouldn't be coaches. They'd be running a retail shop.
yeah.
And they'd have achievement motivators.
Yeah. And you're actually spot on. I mean, exactly how I was. I was fine doing the doing for a time, but after a while, I'd had enough of that. Wanted to do something else, and I suppose this correlates with motivations that change. But before, we don't need to go into that, I suppose. But more, what the important thing that you've already alluded to is how teams use this information and realizing actually that if we don't have a balance, and we've got a balance of all these things in the team, then we could be going round and not actually completing the circle, and we're starting at another point and going back to the next point and missing out a section of it.
Absolutely. Well, if you take Motivational Maps Limited, the sort of HQ, we've got 5 people in the team. 5 people. We have myself, my wife, my son, who's a shareholder in the company, our IT developer, who's also a shareholder in the company, and our PA. So we have 5 people in the company, and we have done a VPFDC 5 elements map on us, and actually, incredibly, all 5. So the team is dominantly vision, I have to say. When taking all 5, the dominant thing is vision, and facilitating is quite strong as well, as it happens. But there is at least one person in the team who has one of those doing or checking alternative things as their number 1 profile thing. So so I won't mention because it's private information, but who's which. But you could imagine, for example, with our James Watson, our IT guru, doing what he does, which is very, very detailed and very obviously there's a lot of doing IT superstructures. You need plans, you need action, you need checking, you need arranging. You could imagine there's a very strong complement to some of what we do at the other end of it all. So that's not to say we're a perfect team by any means, but it does actually mean we are consciously aware that just to keep on me having visions with my wife, and she's also a strong VF. So, it would just be nonsense. We've got to have other kind of communication styles which challenge us and that we embrace. I mean, the thing about it is we do embrace it. I mean, James Watson's thinking, I hope you won't mind me saying this, he's a brilliant guy. It's so different to mine, but I love the guy because he comes up with stuff which really I'm never going to dig into because it's just not my way. So we need that. We need that.
Yeah, I started an OU course on computer science once. I enjoyed it for a while, but then realised it wasn't for me, and I guess that's why I'm doing what I'm doing rather than writing code. So,
well, I'll tell you what you're doing, Mark. If I may be perfectly personal about you, is you're saving your life. I think if you'd have stayed in retail, you'd be dead. You'd have a heart attack or a stroke. In actual fact, you've been completely liberated. Some of your podcasts and stuff. I mean, you're having the life of Riley. In fact, you should be paying other people instead of charging them because you're having such a good time.
Well, there is that, yeah. And I think you're right. I think I had my time in retail. 30 years in retail is enough for anybody. And it's amazing how many people that have had, that experience of retail one way or another within the maths community. I don't know if you're aware, but there's lots of people that have had retail experience. But anyway, this has been really interesting. Hopefully you people that are watching this and catching this on the replay get how important this is. When we talk about teams, that's the thing. if we want to make a real dent in the world, then we can't do on our own. We've got to find people that can complement us and do things that we're not going to do. I think that's the message here, isn't it? That we can't do everything ourselves. We've got to find people that can complement us and make things happen.
Well, I'll tell you something on a personal level for me, which is exactly related to what you just said, and it's absolutely true. And we've noted the fact that I've gone from defender lowest from director lowest. But the other thing we haven't noticed is that I'm searcher number 3. For 10 years or more, spirit was my number 3 motivator. In fact, initially, 15 years ago, it was my number 1 motivator. I was spirit number 1. And this has dropped down the line to about 4th. And I think this is to do with the fact that the need to be free is a lot less pressing for me now, because I feel very free in myself, but also because the searcher, the making a difference, has become more important. And this is, I think, increasingly so as I get older, because obviously I'm aging. So the whole legacy question about what you leave becomes more critical. To leave a legacy, you can't do it on your own. You have to have people who are there with you, who believe in what you're doing, or you're part of their, or whatever the project, the big project is. You're part of something bigger than yourself, which you or other people combine together. So this is part of my motivation in a way, and to find the right kind of people to help spread the message about what we're doing is a core part of my mission, core part of what I have to do. It's fine, and you're one of them, Mark. So that's great news, isn't it?
Fantastic.
So, one of the great people who's getting it out there and spreading it. So this has got a kind of longevity and a legacy about it, so it keeps on working, whether I'm here or I'm not here. So great
stuff. So I will share a link where you can find how you can complete your own 5 elements assessment. And because you are listening to this, wherever you're listening to it, if you use Savvy50 as a coupon code, you will get 50% off. And how generous is that from James? So the first 50 people that use that code will get 50% off. And I will put the link wherever you're watching this below in the comments or wherever, so that you can follow that link and use that code and find out what your strength is with regards to your communication style. Right, so unfortunately time is running out, James. I am very grateful for you to join us. It is, yeah. It is, but we can't keep chatting and using the airwaves forever. So thank you for your time today. Really enjoyed it. Good to catch up.
Thanks for inviting me, Mark. It's been a great experience.
Wish you all the well with the new diagnostic, and hope it all pans out well. I'm sure it will. So I will catch you very shortly.
God bless. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, James. Right. Thank you to James for his insight there. Really valuable. And going back to motivations, if you're want to find out what motivates you, I've created a mini course which I've called How to Stay Energized at Work, and you'll find that on the reluctantleader.academy website. It will tell you what motivates you and also give you a way of using that information to get the best from your work. So thank you for joining us today, and if you catch this on the replay, then please leave a comment. It'd be great to hear from you. Any comments you'd like to ask about the motivation maps, or even the 5 elements diagnostic that we've talked about as well today. So thank you for joining us. Really good to catch up with James, and until the next episode of the Get Savvy Show, have a great day and see you soon.